Imagine waking up at 2 a.m. to the sound of shattering glass, running into the living room, and seeing your neighborhood Karen standing outside your broken window, holding a crowbar, screaming that your house actually belongs to her son. I wish I were exaggerating, but that's the night everything in my quiet, peaceful life snapped into chaos. My wife and I had moved into our new home just a few weeks earlier. It was everything we'd worked for, everything we'd saved, for everything we thought we deserved after years of struggling. And she was pregnant 6 months along, glowing, nervous, excited, the whole world ahead of us. For the first time in a long time, life made sense. We were settling in, unpacking the last boxes, arguing playfully about where the crib should go, imagining what it would feel like to bring our baby home. And then one day, a polite little knock at the door. I opened it expecting a delivery, maybe a neighbor saying hi. But instead I found this kid, 18, maybe 19, skinny, oversized backpack, glasses slipping down his nose. And he looked straight at me and said with full confidence, "Yeah, I want to live here." At first I honestly thought he was joking, or high, or maybe filming some TikTok prank. I looked around for cameras. Nothing. Just this kid standing there waiting for me to hand over my house like it was an Airbnb he forgot to book. I explained calmly that he had the wrong place, that this wasn't a rental, that my wife and I lived here, that we were expecting a baby and needed the whole house. He frowned at me. Frowned, like I was inconveniencing him. Then he shrugged and said, "Okay, but think about it. I need a place to stay." I closed the door, laughing in disbelief. My wife laughed even harder when I told her. We thought it was over. A weird little welcome to the neighborhood moment. It wasn't over. It was the opening act of the most deranged show I've ever been forced to watch. 24 hours later, the doorbell rings again. I open the door, and there she is, the kid's mother, the woman who would become the absolute bane of my existence. Karen. You could spot the entitlement from across the yard, arms crossed, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown she thought she deserved, lips pursed so tight they could have cut glass. She didn't say hello, didn't introduce herself. She just jabbed her finger at me and announced, "My son came here yesterday and told me you refused to discuss his housing situation." I blinked. His what? "His housing," she repeated louder like I was stupid. "He told you he wants to live here, and you dismissed him. Rude, completely unacceptable." I explained again that this was our home, not for rent, not for sale, not open for discussion. She waved her hand like she was shooing away a fly. "That's irrelevant. My son is starting college soon. Dorms are filthy. He needs a clean environment. He will be living here." I actually laughed. Couldn't help it. And that was the moment everything shifted. Her face darkened like a thundercloud rolling in. Then she leaned in, dropped her voice, and said, "Everything is negotiable." "No," I said, "not this." And that's when she fully snapped. "You think we're asking for a room? You will give him the entire house. You need to move out immediately." I closed the door in her face. That was it. No yelling, no insults, just click. 5 seconds later, the pounding started, fists slamming into my door, her shrieking echoing through the hallway. "Open this door, you can't ignore me. This is our right." My pregnant wife jumped, her fork dropping onto her plate. I rushed her into the bedroom, gave her headphones, told her to stay put. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from something worse, anger mixed with disbelief. And then sirens. Karen stood proudly in my yard, waving her arms like she was directing traffic, shouting at the police who had just pulled up. "There, arrest the trespassers." The officers approached calm but tense because they were expecting some kind of violent break-in. Instead, they found me, the actual homeowner, standing on my porch, holding every legal document that proved I owned the place. Karen tried to interrupt every 10 seconds, insisting the papers were fake, that she knew the truth, that I had stolen her son's home. The officers ignored her, checked everything, confirmed the house was legally mine. Karen lost it. She screamed, she cried, she tried to argue the law with the cops. They warned her very gently to calm down or face consequences. That first night they let her go with a warning, and I thought, okay, maybe. Maybe this was enough embarrassment to make her back off. It wasn't. The next week was hell. Tire tracks ripped through my lawn, trash cans knocked over, packages rerouted, handwritten threats shoved into my mailbox. People know what you did. You don't belong here. Move before things get worse. At some point I stopped asking why and started asking how far is she willing to go. Then one night I caught a girl maybe 19 stuffing another threatening note into our mailbox. She bolted, jumped into a black Prius. And the moment I saw the plate I knew Karen wasn't working alone. Her little HOA fantasy was spreading. And yes, I say HOA fantasy because this neighborhood didn't even have an HOA. But that didn't stop Karen. She started recruiting neighbors, printing papers, forming her own interim HOA committee. They came to my door with clipboards claiming they'd received complaints about my family. They told my wife, my pregnant wife, that the community had decided we'd be happier in a rental more suitable for our income level. My wife cried that night. And that broke something in me. Watching the stress hit her so hard she couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I finally thought maybe we should just move. Maybe that's the only way out. Maybe I should swallow my pride and walk away from this nightmare. And for the first time in my life, I doubted myself. Wondered if maybe somehow I was the problem. Maybe we did move too fast. Maybe we did stick out too much. Maybe Karen was right about one thing this neighborhood didn't want us. Then everything changed. 2 nights later I heard a metallic clanking near our driveway at 2 a.m. I called out thinking maybe it was a raccoon. But no, it was Karen's son and another kid, both kneeling beside my water meter flashlights and hand tools ready to shut off the water to a home with a pregnant woman inside. I stepped into the light. Not tonight. They screamed like I was a ghost. One tripped over his own feet. I grabbed Karen's son's arm long enough to snap a photo crystal clear, and he ran screaming down the sidewalk. That was it. No more playing nice. I called the police, filed a report. The officer looked exhausted and said, "She won't stop until someone stops her." He was right. The next morning, Karen came back with officers again accusing me of assaulting her son. She shrieked and wailed and acted like I'd committed a felony. She tried to block the officers from checking the meter. But when they saw the damage, the tampering, the scratches on the bolts, they knew she was lying. Again, she was arrested, screaming the entire way into the cruiser, threatening to sue everyone, threatening to take back her son's home. And again, I thought it was over. Then her son came to my house that night, alone, hands shaking, eyes terrified. And he said, "My mom has one last plan. Something big, something bad. Please, be ready." And then he left. I didn't sleep at all. I pushed furniture away from windows, triple-checked locks, turned on every light. My wife stayed curled up in bed, trying not to cry, her hands on her belly. And at 2:03 a.m. the world exploded. The sound of breaking glass jolted me onto my feet. The window in the living room gone, completely shattered, the wind howling through the opening, and Karen framed by the porch light holding a crowbar. Her hair-wild shirt ripped, eyes furious. "You should have listened," she screamed. "You should have given us the house." She swung the crowbar, not at me, but at my car. The windshield shattered instantly. She kept swinging over and over, screaming that I stole her son's future, that I didn't deserve this house, that she was taking it back tonight. My wife screamed from the bedroom, and something animalistic snapped inside me. I ran toward the broken window. "Karen, stop." She pointed the crowbar at me like it was a rifle. "You can't stop me. You can't stop any of this." But then sirens. Karen froze. The 2 teenagers with her bolted instantly. She looked around like a trapped animal, muttering, "No, not again. You tricked me. You tricked me." "I didn't call anyone," I told her. "You did this yourself." She lunged toward the yard crowbar still in hand, but the officers were faster. They swarmed her, tackled her, wrestled the weapon away. She shrieked, kicked, tried to twist out of their grip. "You can't arrest me. I'm the victim." "He stole our house," she screamed as they shoved her into the cruiser. But this time, they didn't hesitate. They listed the charges calmly. Vandalism, trespassing, attempted break-in, violation of a no-contact order, endangerment of a pregnant woman. And then they found her bag in the car. Zip ties, duct tape, spray paint, a hammer, and a handwritten note titled, "How to Force Eviction." It wasn't just harassment anymore. She had a plan, a real plan, And that was the moment I realized if the police had arrived 5 minutes later, I might not be telling this story at all. I watched them haul her away. My wife clung to me, her whole body trembling. And the only thing I could think over and over was how close we came to losing everything. But even then, even after all of that, the nightmare found one last way to twist the knife. The next morning a letter arrived, thick, expensive stationery, from a law firm, a cease and desist, accusing me of harassment, accusing me of threatening her, demanding I remove all footage, stop talking about her, stop creating a hostile environment. I almost laughed. Almost. But instead I took every note, every picture, every timestamp, every police report, and handed it all to a real attorney. And he looked at Karen's letter, smirked, and said, "Don't worry. People like her only dig their own graves deeper." And he was right, because in the end, the last thing I saw before the police closed the cruiser door was Karen's face twisted with rage, disbelief, and pure bitter defeat. And that's where her story ends. Mine keeps going, but her reign of terror done. Sometimes the worst battles you fight aren't with strangers, but with people who convince themselves they're right no matter how wrong they are. And the lesson: if you don't stand up to insanity, it eventually believes it owns you.